existence disappears and when it assumes the body of the intermediate existence. The birth occurs at the same time as the disappearance. It is as if one presses a wax seal onto clay and, the clay having received the imprint were to be broken at once. The impression and the disappearance of the imprint are simultaneous, without anteriority or posteriority. At the very same moment when one takes on the aggregates and the mode of being of the intermediate existence, one abandons the aggregates of the intermediate existence to assume the mode of being of existence birth. You say that the subtle body constitutes this intermediate existence, but this alleged body of intermediate existence comes from nowhere and goes nowhere. It is like the burning of a lamp characterized by a succession of productions and disappearances, without permanence, but also without interruption. 1. Finally, the Buddha said, whether past, future or present, coarse or subtle, all substance is transitory. 1 Therefore your alleged subtle matter constituting the atman would also be transitory and perishable. For many reasons of this kind we know that the atman is not substantial. Neither is the atman non-substantial. The 4 aggregates 1 and the 3 unconditioned factors are non-substantial. The 4 aggregates in question, being impermanent, dependent on causes and conditions, cannot be the atman. As for the 3 non-conditioned factors, they cannot be considered as being the atman because they are not taken on. For many reasons of this kind we know that the atman is not non-substantial. Search for the atman in the heavens or on earth, inside or outside, in the 3 times or the 10 directions, you will never find it anywhere. Only the coming together of the 12 bases of consciousness dvadasayatana, i.e., the 6 sense organs and their respective objects produce the 6 consciousnesses. The coming together of the 3 trisamnipata, or the coming together of the organs, the objects and the consciousnesses is called contact. Contact produces feeling, concept, the act of attention and other mental dharmas. 1 According to the Buddhist system, it is by the power of ignorance that satkayadrsti arises. As a result of satkayadrsti, the existence of atman is affirmed. This satkayadrsti is destroyed by seeing the truth of suffering. Duhkhasatyadarsana, the knowledge of the law relating to suffering and the subsequent knowledge relating to suffering. When satkayadrsti is destroyed, one no longer believes in the atman. Refutation of the second argument. Above you said, if there is no inner atman, given that the consciousness of colors arises and perishes from moment to moment, how does one distinguish and cognize the color blue, yellow, red or white? But if the atman existed, neither could it cognize it by itself. It would have to depend on the visual consciousness to be able to cognize it. If that is so, the atman is futile. The visual consciousness cognizes color. Color arises and perishes, and the visual consciousness arises in similarity with it and perishes in similarity with it. However, in the mind that immediately follows, there arises a dharma called memory. This memory is a conditioned dharma. Although it perishes and disappears, this memory is capable of cognizing. In the same way that the Arya, by the power of his wisdom, is able to cognize future things, so successive moments of memory are able to cognize past moments. On disappearing, the previous visual consciousness gives birth to the subsequent visual consciousness. This subsequent visual consciousness is endowed with power by the energy of its activity and, although the color is temporary and unstable, it can be cognized thanks to the energy of memory. This is why, while arising and ceasing from moment to moment and despite its impermanence, consciousness can distinguish and cognize color. Refutation of the third argument. You said, if there were no atman, since the evil-seeing human consciousnesses, which are always arising and perishing, all disappear with the life of the body, who then is related to actions, sins or merits? Who endures the suffering or enjoys the happiness? Who is liberated? Now we will reply. 1. In the person who has not yet obtained the true path, the afflictions cover over the mind. He performs actions that are the causes and condition for his rebirth. After death, the 5 aggregates of the future existence arise from the series of 5 aggregates of the present existence in the same way that one lamp lights another. And in the same way that, in the production of rice, 3 causes and conditions intervene, namely, soil, water and seed, so for a future existence to be produced, a body, defiled actions and the fetters are necessary. Of these 3 causes and conditions, the body and actions cannot be cut through, cannot be suppressed. Only the fetters can be cut through. When the fetters are cut through, even though a body and actions remain, one can obtain liberation. If there is a rice seed and earth, but water is missing, the rice will not grow. Similarly also, despite the presence of a body and despite the presence of actions, one is not reborn when the water of the fetters has dried up. Thus, even though there is no atman, one can obtain liberation. Bondage is due to ignorance. Liberation is due to wisdom. The atman plays no part. 2. Finally, the complex of name and form is commonly called Pudgala. This Pudgala is chained by all the bonds. But when it has found the tab of pure wisdom, it unties all the knots. From that time onward, this person has found liberation. It is like a rope which one knots or unknots. The rope is the knot, and the knot is not something distinct. But in common usage we say, to tie the rope, to untie the rope. It is the same for name and form. The coming together of these 2 things, i.e., name and form, is commonly called Pudgala, but the fetters are not something different from name and form. With regard to name and form, it is just a matter of being chained by the fetters or liberated from the fetters. It is the same for receiving punishment or reward. Although no dharma is truly Pudgala, it is by means of name and form that one gathers the fruit of sins and merits. And yet the Pudgala has the name of the gatherer. It is like the chariot that carries goods. By examining it piece by piece, there is no real chariot distinct from its constitutive parts. Nevertheless, the chariot has the name of the transporter of goods. In the same way, the Pudgala receives punishment and reward in the sense that name and form receive punishment or reward, whereas the Pudgala has merely the name of receiver. It is the same for what feels suffering or happiness. For many reasons of this kind, the atman is non-existent. Here atman means the donor, but it is the same for the recipient. According to you, the atman is the Pudgala. This is why the Pudgala who gives is non-existent and the Pudgala who receives is non-existent. For many reasons of this kind, it is said that the thing given, the donor and the recipient do not exist. Question. If, among all the dharmas, the gift has as the true nature as its characteristic, if it is indestructible, non-perishable, unborn and uncreated, why do you say that the 3 elements of which it is constituted, namely gift, donor and recipient, are broken and non-existent? Answer. If ordinary people think they see a donor, a recipient and a gift, that is an error and a wrong view. They are reborn in this world.